A senior officer can be in charge of a whole destroyer department and still sleep in a tiny room with a roommate in a bunk that's literally built into the ship. From the pier, it looks simple: gray paint, antennas, a warship made to move fast and fight hard. But the second you step inside, it's a loud, tight maze. Skinny hallways, steep ladders, doors everywhere, and labels on every space because nobody can afford to guess where they are. So today we're walking through it. Where do high-ranking officers actually sleep when the ship is rocking? Where do they eat? What does their day feel like when they're always one announcement away from being needed? If you want more inside the ship breakdowns like this, hit subscribe now. You live in hierarchy because a destroyer does not have room for confusion. At the top is the commanding officer, the CO, carrying the ship, the mission, and every life on board. Right under them is the executive officer, the XO, who keeps the daily engine running so the CO can stay focused on bigger calls. Then come the department heads, senior officers who translate intent into action across operations, engineering, weapons, and supply. On land, people imagine rank equals luxury. At sea, rank equals responsibility, and your living space is built around that reality. Even your first minutes on board make that clear. You report aboard in a proper uniform with your original orders because arrival is formal, not a casual check-in. During daylight hours, roughly 0800 to sundown, you pause on the brow, face aft, and salute the national ensign at the stern. Then you step to the quarterdeck, salute again, and request permission to come aboard, sir. The watchstander might be a junior. You still say sir because that person represents the authority of the ship. Your orders get signed, dated, timed, and the destroyer becomes your world. Now, the first surprise. High-ranking officers live in staterooms, and the word sounds like a hotel until you see one. A destroyer stateroom is a compact cabin designed to do 3 jobs at the same time. It is where you sleep, where you work, and where you grab the smallest possible slice of privacy. Now, compared to enlisted berthing, open racks, and larger shared spaces, it feels like a privilege because you have a door. You can close it, lower your voice, and stop scanning passageways for 60 seconds. But space is still the boss. Sharing is normal. Junior officers can have anywhere from 1 to 5 bunkmates depending on manning and rank. As you move up, lieutenants and above generally have fewer people in the cabin. Even at lieutenant commander and above, it can still be at least 1 bunkmate. That is destroyer math. Weapons take space. Machinery takes space. Ammunition takes space. The ship's ability to fight eats the ship. Your comfort comes last because comfort does not win a casualty. Now picture the stateroom the way it really feels. Your rack is built into the ship like it is part of the structure. Storage is a puzzle of lockers and compartments where every inch has to earn its keep. You get a desk corner that becomes your planning table and paperwork station, the place you prep briefs, review notes, and write what needs to be written even when your brain is begging for sleep. You learn to move with intention because the room punishes wasted motion with bruised shins and bumped elbows, and the sound never fully turns off. Ventilation rides under everything. Latches click. Footsteps transmit through steel like the ship is conducting every step into your bones. If the sea is heavy, motion becomes part of your sleep. You do not sleep like you do at home. You sleep like someone who might be needed. The closest thing to real privilege is not size, it is the location. Senior officer quarters are often positioned so you can reach your work centers quickly. For some, that means closer to the bridge. For others, closer to engineering spaces. The logic is brutal and simple. When the ship needs leadership, it needs it now. You want the person who has to make the call, arriving fast, clear-eyed, and in control. Then you learn the second language of the ship, how to not get lost. Compartments are stamped with alphanumeric bullseye markings that tell you what deck you are on, where you are along the ship, which side of the center line you are on, and what the space is used for. Even numbers are to port. Odd numbers are to starboard. It sounds small until you are moving fast in a crowded passageway, and your brain has to make correct decisions without thinking. That code is how you stay oriented when the ship is busy, dark, or drilling. Those markings turn from information into instinct during drills. When the ship announces smoke, flooding, or a man overboard, the location is not described like a building on shore. It is called by compartment and frame so everyone can converge fast without guessing. In the dark, you follow the route you memorized because watertight doors can close and cut the ship into small boxes. You start thinking in decks and frames the way you think in streets back home. A map in your head is time you get back. You learn the ship's traffic physics too. Passageways and ladder wells are tight. You yield to seniors. You look up and down before committing to a ladder well because this is a three-dimensional environment and someone is always coming the other way. Courtesy. On board is not just manners. Courtesy prevents jams and collisions when hundreds of people are moving through narrow steel corridors and the ship is trying to operate as one body. Now food, because outsiders assume this is where the gap becomes luxury. Officers eat in the wardroom, separate from the enlisted mess decks. On a destroyer, it is usually one wardroom, and it becomes the social and working heart of officer life. You do not just eat there. You coordinate there, you debrief there, you absorb what the ship is thinking and what it needs next. The wardroom is where problems get solved before they become casualties. Wardroom etiquette matters more than people expect because tradition creates order without constant supervision. You wear the uniform of the day. You acknowledge the senior officer present and ask permission to join the mess. Officers are often addressed by function on board, like XO or OPS, because function is identity at sea. The captain's and XO's seats are reserved. When you are finished, you identify the senior officer present and ask to be excused. Small rules, big effect. They keep respect visible when everyone is tired. If you are learning a lot from this, hit subscribe because we are about to reach the part that explains why officer living spaces are built the way they are. Because eventually the ship reminds you what it is really for. General quarters is the moment your stateroom stops mattering and your world becomes routes, stations, and speed with control. You move to your assigned station as quickly as practical, and you do it safely, because sprinting in a ship is how people get hurt. During high-tempo movement, the ship manages traffic with a flow pattern, up and forward on the starboard side, down and aft on the port side. Order matters when everyone is moving at once through narrow passageways. Then the ship goes to condition zebra, watertight integrity. Doors and hatches shut to contain flooding and slow the spread of fire. That is why you do not wander during GQ. You get to where you belong before the ship buttons itself up. You dress for it too, sleeves down and buttoned, collar secured, pant legs tucked or taped, and whatever protective gear your station requires. Proximity becomes an advantage here because it reduces the time between something is happening and leadership is on scene. Outside drills, safety is still daily. A warship is a hazardous environment even when nothing dramatic is happening. Power can fail, smoke can travel. Metal decks and ladder wells punish carelessness. You keep a personal light because getting caught in the dark on board is not a small inconvenience. Right? You identify escape routes from your stateroom and your work center because people have died when they did not plan how to get out. You wear shoes even for a short trip because steel decks and ladders do not care about bare feet. And some teams always have the right of way. Fire response personnel moving to a scene get the passageway. No debate. Security forces responding to an alert get the passageway. No debate. High-ranking officers live under those rules too, and they have to model them because the crew watches what leadership does, not what leadership says. Between watches and drills, your life becomes routines that keep you functional. You check the plan of the day so you know what the ship expects before it expects it. You pack light because everything you own has to be carried through narrow passageways and stored in limited space. You mark clothing and manage laundry because unmarked items disappear into the ship's machine. You take quick, efficient showers because water is managed on board. You exercise because performance is part of leadership and stress is constant. So, how do high-ranking officers live on a destroyer? You live in a stateroom that gives you just enough privacy to reset, but not enough distance to forget the mission. You share more than outsiders expect because the ship is built for fighting first. You eat in a wardroom that doubles as a planning table in a culture engine. You move through a steel maze using compartment language, traffic flow, and awareness. And when the ship shifts into general quarters and condition zebra, you understand why proximity, discipline, and routine matter more than comfort ever could. These accommodations are not about status. They are about sustaining people who have to think clearly and act fast in a place that never stops. Subscribe for more. And tell us in the comments what part of destroyer life would test you the most. The lack of space, the lack of quiet, or the fact that you are always one announcement away from being needed.